Yeah.
So, good morning to all of you. It's a pleasure to welcome the teachers and students of Dr. D.Y. Patil Biotechnology and Bioinformatics Institute to this training session, the first of its kind for the review writing or educating students about review writing. So, the speaker this morning is Professor J.K. Paul. I welcome Professor Paul. I also welcome our panelists. Dr. Professor Neelu Navani, Professor Sharma, Dr. Gupta, IPSA Madam, and our student coordinators Srishti and Rituja. So without taking much time, I would like to invite Professor Paul to deliver his talk. Before I hand over this platform, I would like to inform the students that please send in your questions to Srishti and Rituja, and we'll be happy to answer them. Professor Paul, please. Sir, are you able to hear?
Yeah. I'm going to share a presentation.
Yeah.
Share screen. Is it seen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Morning to all of you, my panelists and the dear students. We are pleased to begin the first session on review writing. It's a kind of training session. So the information that we percolate, I think that we provide should percolate among all of you who are participating in this particular exercise, and some basic guidelines that are being shown here. And there would be 2-3 more sessions. So I am the beginner, so I am touching upon some of the very basics that are required to understand before undertaking this particular exercise. Scientific review writing is an exercise which every scientist, every teacher undertakes at some point in time. And now, with more and more trend is coming, the students should also participate. Barring the research students, they of course do, but the undergraduate and postgraduate students have every possibility of undertaking a fruitful exercise of this kind, eventually to lead to this stage of publication. So it becomes a creditable thing, as well as one gets a good training if one is going to take up research in future. So let's start off with what is a literature review. We should have a clear concept. A literature review is not just a summary of sources, a grouping of broad, unrelated sources, a compilation of everything that has been written on a particular topic, or literature criticism, or a book review. So these are not part of the literature review. But what is it then? It's an integrated analysis, not just a summary of specific writings that are related directly to your research question. So to begin with, you have to have a research question. What you are going to searching on, and what you are going to write about in terms of the data that already exists in the literature. So it actually represents the literature that provides background information of the topic and shows, more importantly, correspondence between those writings and your review of the questions. So literature review many times can be a standalone work, or the same thing can be utilized when you go for doing your dissertation or project, for example, the introduction to a research paper or a dissertation or a thesis, depending on the assignments that you undertake. So it relies heavily on the guidelines of your instructor, which is given by in the course of the training that you are going to undertake. Why is it important to have literature review? What does it provide? And how people write reviews? Now, it explains the background of research on a topic. If anybody wants to take up a research topic, from a review, one can get the background of that topic, which is very, very important to have a foundation on that particular topic. It demonstrates why a topic is significant to a subject area. A literature review, if written correctly, it would indicate the significance of that particular subject area. For example, if you are reviewing the molecular diagnostics available in various types of cancer. Now, if you review it properly, all what is known, available, and the reason to undertake such kind of research, then the review is going to be a place where the significance of this is going to be understood. And it discovers relationships between research studies and ideas. There are many, many people working on the same research areas. So therefore, it links one research with the other research or one group of researchers with the other. And then how do they tally or how do they differ or how do they vary from one kind of specific area of cancer, for example, to another area? It identifies major themes, concepts, and researchers on a topic. Then identifies critical gaps and points of disagreement. While you are reviewing, one can point out the gaps that are existing in that particular area, and therefore they becomes the thread to be taken up for future research. It also says that there are disagreements between two groups or three groups on a particular understanding or data, and then you self-analyze it and you give your opinion with reference to the acceptability of one or the other or demands further research also. And it discusses further research that automatically comes out from this kind of analysis. Now, what are the different steps for conducting a literature review? That is what is primary requirement to begin with. So you first choose a topic and define your research question. What are you going to review within that particular topic? A specific area or a specific, like if you talk about, I always refer cancer biology, it becomes easy to pick up. Now, if you want cancer biology is the topic or cancer research, then define your research question. What in cancer research? What exactly you are going to talk about in this review? Are you specifically looking at the diagnostics, or you are talking about therapeutics, or you are talking about the cell signaling involved in a particular type of cancer or different cancers? So you have to define your research question within a broad topic that you choose and decide on the scope of your review. Now, if there are plenty of reviews already available on that topic, you should avoid it. Unless there are no recent reviews, then you can pick up. Or if pick up a topic which people have not reviewed so far. So then it would have a broader scope and broader take by the people in the specific area. Now, once you have done these two steps, now what you do, select the databases. People should turn down the audio, those who are not talking. So then once you have decided a topic, defined a research question, and understood that this topic or questions related to the review is going to be useful, then select the databases you will use to conduct your searches. You have to have literature. So you have to use databases to pull out specific data or literature that is available in that particular area with specific questions. Then conduct your searches and find the literature. Keep track of the searches, because once you did some kind of search, if you don't have the record, if you have to go back, you have to do all over again. So keep track of the searches. And then once you have all the literature available to you, you go through them, try to understand, pick up your specific requirement from them, and write on your own in your own language or review the literature in that direction. So in a nutshell, these are the steps that everybody has to go through in order to come to the stage of writing. So coming to the first, choose a topic, define your research question. What is the meaning of that? So your literature review should begin or should be guided by a central research question. Again, to remind you, it's not a collection of loosely related studies in the field. Instead, it represents background and research developments related to specific research question. And then it has to be interpreted, it has to be analyzed by you in a synthesized way. You have to synthesize. What is synthesis? You have now the ingredients for a particular preparation, let's say in the kitchen. You have all raw materials, you have all spices and everything, but you have to use a protocol or a recipe to finally make a product, a food product which you are interested in. So you have to synthesize, and that the best you can synthesize, the better it would be appreciated by the consumers. So therefore, same is true here. You have to analyze the data and synthesize in your own way to eventually write it up in the form of a review. Now tips, make sure your research question is not too broad or too narrow. It's manageable. And begin writing down terms that are related to your question. And these will be useful for searches later. And if you have the opportunity, discuss your topic, of course, off and on with your professors. So therefore, we have a large number of faculty members who are part of it. And depending on the assignment, you can always take the guidance from the teachers at every stage. Now decide on the scope of your review. Now, how many studies do you need to look at? How comprehensive should it be? And how many years should it cover? If you are reviewing a particular literature in a field, you have to select how many years that you are going to cover. Last 5 years, last 10 years, depending on the requirement of that particular topic and depending on the literature that is available. Like very hot topics like it has been in the past 10 years, the HIV. But you cannot go on reviewing right from the discovery of HIV/AIDS till now. You have to then take more recent ones, which are more important in terms of the treatment in particular, therapeutics and so on. And select the databases you will choose to conduct your search. And make a list of the databases you will search. And remember to include comprehensive databases, such as the worldwide available databases for dissertation, thesis also, if you need, in addition to the literature. Now conduct your searches and find the literature. Keep track of your searches, as I said earlier. Review the abstract of research studies carefully. This will save your time. Write down the searches you conduct in each database so that you may duplicate them if you need to later, or avoid dead-end searches that you would forgotten you have already tried. Use the bibliographies and references of research studies you find to locate others. Like if you found a very good research paper, now there are many things which are referred at the back as bibliography, which may be equally important, some of them. So then you use those to find out further work on this particular paper, related to this paper, and so on. And then you can ask your professor or a scholar in the field if you are missing any keywords in the field. Now, a quick review of how does one go for literature work. Let's say there is a beautiful YouTube movie by one of the researchers, and maybe I will show this just to begin with, how one can search in Pubmed, which is one of the major databases in health sciences in particular. So I will screen this film later on, okay, not immediately. I'll come back to this, give an example how a particular person has explained how does one search in Pubmed with specific questions and the keywords. Now, once you have done, then review the literature. Now, some questions which might help you to analyze the research. What was the research question of the study you are reviewing, right? You are reading. What were the authors trying to discover? That should be in your mind while you are reviewing the literature. Was the research funded by a source that could influence the findings? Many times there are companies which do research. They are a little biased based on their requirement. So therefore, funding source is important also to check when you are looking at a particular paper. What were the research methodologies? Analyze its literature review, the samples and variables used, the results, and the conclusions. These are very important points. Keep in mind while reviewing a particular literature or a paper. Does the research seem to be complete? Could it have been conducted more soundly? What further questions does it raise? This is a very important part, which would be your own take home and your own writing in the review while you are doing the literature review. Is it complete or not? That you can find out from the discussion or conclusion many times. They would spell out further research is required. So that means automatically it is not complete. Could it have been conducted more soundly? If they have taken a small sample group, they could have taken a larger one because statistically it is not significant, this study. What further questions does it raise? Again, in the discussion, the author of that paper might himself have indicated this study raises further questions which requires to be investigated further. So these are very golden points that should be picked up from the paper that you are reading. If there are conflicting studies, why do you think that is? If two papers are saying results of the same question which are a bit conflicting to each other, then analyze why it is conflicting. Have they used same methods, similar methodologies? Have they used statistics which is acceptable, and so on and so forth? How are the authors viewed in the field? You also look at the reputation of the person who has done, who has published that paper. What are their credentials in terms of publications? Do they have high impact factor publications very consistently, and so on? Has this study been cited? If so, how has it been analyzed? So these are some of the questions that are important to keep in mind while reviewing the literature. There are tips like, again, review the abstract carefully. Keep careful notes so that you may track your thought process during the research process. Now, finding the literature and where to find databases. Find articles and books. Many times books can give you basics and also up-to-date information if there are latest editions on a particular topic. Finding articles and books using a database for your discipline, which is most often is the procedure. Then you can also look at worldwide theses and dissertations, which are also published and available. Then Google Scholar. It is important only if you are looking at the publication of a famous person. You go to Google Scholar, you can find that person's publications, and therefore at one place you can have related publication on a particular topic. Then online reference materials that you collect. So these are some of the sources where you can find the literature. Now some of the examples of databases for life science in particular. Biological abstracts, now it is a part of Web of Science. During our time, that used to be the Bible for our literature search, biological abstract. We used to go to the library at least one day in a week and sit tight from morning till evening and go through biological abstracts and make notes. Used to have very beautiful small cards made for making notes. And then we come back and we ask for detailed publication. We request the authors, and at our time, they used to come by surface mail. So they used to come after 2 months, 3 months or so. And now it is so easy. You don't have to go back to that old system that we have gone through. But biological abstract still is a major source of the literature. It's a complete collection of bibliographic references covering life science and biomedical research literature, published from more than 4,000 journals internationally. This database provides users with access to the latest information in virtually every life science discipline. So it is a broad-based database where you can get all the information. Then there is one ProQuest, Biological Science Collection. It contains biological science related full text articles and the entire range of bibliographic records from biological science database. It supports over 24 areas of expertise. Biological science provides access to literature from serials, as well as conference proceedings, technical reports, monographs, selected books, and patents. So it is also a broad-based biological science data collection source. Then Bio1, this is another database. We have JSTOR Life Science Archive Collection. So these also include social science, humanities, and science. Then Web of Science, it contains several databases: Science Citation Index, Social Science, Biological Abstract, Medline, SciLO Citation Index, and so on. And Science General, there are broader overall science databases: Science Direct, which is by Elsevier, then Science Full Text Select, H.W. Wilson. It mostly covers general science, applied science, technology, biological and agricultural articles, and so on. Wiley Online Library, it also provides broad and deep coverage of online resources covering life, health, and physical sciences, and so on. Many of the articles are available full text. And SciTech Collection, this is also another database which are available. Now, this is one important practice with reference to your organizing yourself. You got all the literature, you start studying all the literature, but you should prepare a synthesis matrix. What is a synthesis matrix? Basically, an Excel document where each paper you document what all information that you have got. I will show you that. So a synthesis matrix in Excel can help you get a jump start on finding ways in which the literature differs and same between literature. Then composing your literature review. Once you have settled on a general pattern of organization, you are ready to write each section. And there are a few guidelines you should follow during the writing stage. So I will now show you the synthesis matrix, how it looks like. Do you see it?
No, sir, we are still able to see the PowerPoint.
I see. I have to remove that or what? Okay, I will get back to it later, I think.
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Okay, this I will get back to you later, synthesis matrix. Now, guidelines to follow during the writing stage. As usual, for any research paper, including review, you have an introduction, which gives a quick idea of the topic of the literature review, such as the central theme or organizational pattern. And the main body, which will contain your discuss on sources and is organized either chronologically, thematically, or methodologically, depending on the kind of review that you are doing. And the third one is, of course, the conclusion and recommendation, where you discuss what you have drawn from reviewing literature so far, where might the discussion proceed? Because each review should give indications of future research, which are not done, which are not conclusive, which requires further studies, and so on. So those are going to be part of the conclusion and the recommendation. Now, to have given you a salient features of the procedures that you should follow while going for literature review, I think I have conveyed most of the basic requirements. Now, there are certain parts which are equally important. One of them is keywords. You have to decide on the keywords prior to completing the review while you are analyzing the data or literature. You can revise your keywords as you keep on reading the literature, and at the final, you have to revise it still. But to begin with, keywords are very important for the search procedures of the literature. Like, what are keywords? Now, in the first paragraph, a description is given about a research topic. I would read it out to you. A drug delivery system that targets cancer-associated extracellular cathepsin B is described by somebody, a research group, some et al. In their communication, the developed system is based on a lipidated cathepsin B-specific inhibitor incorporated into the envelope of the liposomal nanocarrier, which could be used for selective targeting of tumor and stromal cells in the microenvironment of the tumor while sparing the healthy normal cells. This is the essence of the publication. What they have tried to develop a system which is based on lipidated cathepsin B-specific inhibitor incorporated into the envelope of liposomal nanocarrier. So it's a kind of nanomedicine, targeted nanocarrier mediated targeting of the cancer cells. So keywords, of course, there has to be first keyword, it is cancer. Then the molecule that is targeted is cathepsin B. Then it is a system which is a drug delivery system, liposome mediated nanocarrier containing targeting a delivery. Then this is a theranostics. What are theranostics? They are having two different purposes. One is therapeutic purpose, the other one is at the same time diagnostic purpose. So there will be two molecules part of the preparation, thereby it can be called a theranostics. And of course, your niche is tumor microenvironment. So these are the keywords. from the description that we see on the top. Now, to define that, the keywords are words or phrases that describe content of the research. They can be used as metadata to describe images, text documents, database records, and web pages. And keywords are also used in the web in two different ways. As search terms for search engines, databases, and second, words that identify the content of the website. So these are the crucial features of keywords, preparing the keywords based on what is your question, and they can be useful, and keep revising the keywords as your understanding of the literature progresses towards the end. Now, another new thing that has come, if you want to publish your literature review in a very good journal, they are also insisting on another important item, and that is called graphical abstract. The abstracts are the abstract of a paper or a review is a condensed description of what it is the paper about. It's generally about 250 to 500 words, depending on the journal. They have specific limit of words. Now, they also insist you make a graphical abstract. You express all the writings that you have in the form of a graph. And you don't require, those are in addition to the requirement of the write-up of the abstract. Now, these graphical abstracts have been there for decades in the chemical journals, but in life science journals or medicine journals, engineering, this has come more recently. These abstracts are an excellent method for communicating your research, and every young researcher should learn how to make them most effectively. Now, coming back, what is a graphical abstract? It's a visual element that clearly and succinctly conveys the main message of your research paper. The graphical abstract should be prepared keeping the title in mind, because in most cases, the title and the graphical abstract are presented together. As the scientific messages are usually quite complex, it is crucial to understand how scientists read research papers, where one of the most important lessons is that most scientists don't read everything, but they read the title and the graphical abstract. It becomes much quicker to take a glance of any research paper without going into the details of the paper, the entire paper. So what are the goals of a graphical abstract then? According to Elsevier, the graphical abstract should capture the content of the paper at a single glance, allow readers to quickly understand the take-home message, encourage browsing, promote interdisciplinary scholarship, help readers identify more quickly which papers are relevant to their research interest. By looking at graphical abstract, you can make out whether it is important for you. If it is, then only you go more details of the paper, or else you skip it. The criteria for designing graphical abstracts differ from publisher to publisher and are described in the journal's guide to the authors. Although they are primarily required for journal papers, they can also be very effectively used in conference posters. These days, in conference posters also we make graphical abstract, slide presentations, or in your project proposal. And skip this. How does one prepare or create a graphical abstract? When preparing graphical abstract, one usually follows this creative process. It consists of 3 steps. Step 1, concept. 2, sketch. 3, design and refine. The first two steps are done on paper, concept and sketch, and then only one moves to graphic design software. The examples are given below for the third step, design and refine. There is Microsoft Paint, CamDraw, Microsoft PowerPoint, of course, GIMP and Inkscape, Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator, CorelDRAW for Windows, and Affinity Designer for Mac. CorelDRAW is very, very important, and those who write books and all, they utilize these design softwares very often, including myself. Now, this is an example of a graphical abstract. About the same topic that we started off, the cathepsin B lipidated inhibitor. So what is shown here, you have the tumor targeting, that is the topic. And how it is done, they have made a liposome nanocarrier. And in this, there are two components. One where it is for targeting extracellular cathepsin B, and this also contains an inhibitor. So automatically, if it targets the cancer cells where extracellular cathepsin B is more expressed, then that can be killed by the inhibitor. And the inhibitor has been shown by the chemical formula on the right-hand side, right? And the cell is shown where with the receptors and the extracellular cathepsin B. So it starts with tumor targeting. Then you have liposome nanocarrier, is the capsule, and that targets the cell containing extracellular cathepsin B, and it also has the inhibitor, a chemical which can inhibit the cathepsin B, and therefore this becomes selective targeting of tumor and stromal cells by a nanocarrier system displaying lipidated cathepsin B inhibitor. So this paper is published in 2014. People who are interested can go through in more details. It is given. The DOI is also given, so you can see this paper for more details. So this is an example of a graphical abstract. I have my own publications. Two of them I am citing here. There is a recent paper, which is 2017, we published in Journal of Bioscience. And here it is a review on the untranslated regions of mRNA and their role in regulating gene expression in protozoan parasites. Now, this is the abstract, which is the condensed form of the description of the entire review. Now, we also had to give a graphical abstract. Now, this graphical abstract is very complicated as compared to the previous one that I showed you. So there are two different regulatory mechanisms of translation or protein synthesis that are shown here. On top, it is the host, that is the human, how the mRNA is regulated for translation. And the next one down there is the protozoan parasite, where there are many of them, Trichomonas, Entamoeba, then there are other parasites and vertebrates, where the protozoan parasites versus the host of the vertebrates, up and down and up, are respectively presented graphically. What are the different ways by which the mRNA is regulated for its translation? What you see, the ribosome binding in both cases, but prior to that, that is ribosome binding or ribosome complex ATS is actually at the initiation codon, AUG. But there are many things happening on the 5' UTR, untranslated region, and the 3' UTR. So how in the host versus parasite, the differences that are shown here, similarities and differences. The idea is, by using these differences, can the parasite be targeted independent of the host? So that is all about this review, and this is the graphical abstract by which one can understand what is in this review that we are going to read and how it is important if we are interested in targeting the parasites in the context of the host, right? Now, I would like to share with you another review a few years down the lane we published in the same line, but little more on the medical science, role of 5' 3' untranslated regions of mRNAs in human diseases. This review is the best review that I have written along with my group, and the most highly cited paper among around 100 papers that I have published. This has been cited over 400 times. You can go to Google Scholar and you can find out this. And this paper was so popular, the journal Biology of the Cell, they asked us to make a cover page based on this theme. And this cover page was designed by my student, Sangeeta Chatterjee, and myself. And it actually is the cover page of this journal was based on our articles published in this, or review published in this journal. So I'm very happy to share with you that if you write a review, if it is appreciated by people, the peers and the colleagues, it is almost every day it is cited even till now, once or twice. So that is the worth of writing a successful review. And I'm sure many of you are going to be trained through series of such seminars that we are conducting, training sessions, and it will be useful for you in the years to come when you become a full-blown scientist or a teacher or a R&D head and so on. These are some of the references since these are going to be given, so is there. And now I am going to show you how does one do literature search in the PubMed, which is a review, a kind of YouTube movie made by one of the scientists. Yeah, the organizing the literature review. Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is a Excel sheet to keep noting what all you are reviewing in terms of the literature. And there are different sites, if you see it, summarize form of the analysis of different papers that you do. So you have the citation, then purpose, rationale of research question, theory framework, research method, sample, variables used, measure findings and contribution, study limitations, gaps that remain, then study implication for research practice, policy. Then after reading several articles, then you make note of how this research is linked to other studies and note themes that emerge in the body of literature, and then miscellaneous note. So you make a systematic index of all the literature that you are reading and making notes of this kind. So this is very, very important.
So you've got to do a literature review, but you're not quite sure where to start.
I should make it full view, slideshow.
Now, the biggest problem that people have when they do a literature review is they do a search in a search engine like PubMed, and they actually find too many papers. And the trick is to narrow that search down so that you land up with a manageable number of papers without losing important publications. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that using Boolean operators, those are ands, ors, and nots, and mesh terms in PubMed. So stay tuned. It's worth mentioning that a good search is only part of doing a good literature review. And if you want to learn more about all the other aspects of a literature review, then go to learnmore365.com, and I've got a course on how to do a literature review right there. Okay, let's get stuck in. Right, so this is PubMed. PubMed is a database and a search engine that you can use to search biomedical literature. It's got over 28 million citations. If you're doing a search that's outside of the medical field, not to worry. Most of what we're going to talk about applies to any search engine. The temptation now is to jump right in and do a search in the search box. I'm going to say no. First thing you want to do is you want to sign in, and if you don't have an account, create one. It's free, and you're going to find it extremely useful. Now we've signed in, and again, the temptation is we see a search box. Let's stick in some search terms and start searching. Again, the answer is no. I'm going to suggest we go straight to the advanced section, and you're going to see why in just a minute. This is a much more powerful way of doing your search. So this is the advanced search builder section, and it lets you build up a search query that will hopefully provide you with the results that you want. Let's just quickly have a look at what we've got here. At the top, we've got a section. This is where your search is going to land up being. This is down here is the builder. Now this is where all the action is going to take place, and you're going to find this very exciting. And down below, we see a history, and at the moment the history is empty, but you're going to find this extremely useful as well, and we're going to look at how to use that. Now remember, we're coming to the search engine having already done some thinking, right? So we've identified a purpose for our literature review. And for example, if we were doing a literature review on the impact of poverty on HIV treatment outcomes, we've got three conceptual buckets, right? We've got poverty, and there's search terms and keywords around poverty that we're interested in. Then there's HIV, same thing applies. And then of course there's treatment outcomes. So if we take our first conceptual bucket, we want to build up a search term that finds all of the papers that have anything to do with the idea of poverty. So we type in poverty, and let's say, for example, there's another word, let's say deprivation, that might be of interest. Now there'll be many, many more, but we're just going to use two for the sake of this example. Now remember, we said we want to use or and not and, because we want to include all the papers that meet either of these criteria, not the papers that intersect with both of them. Now instead of pushing search, if we pushed search here, it would do that search and tell us about all of and show us the papers that it found. We're not interested in seeing those papers at this point. We're simply interested in knowing how many papers it identified. So instead we click on just add to history. Right, so now in our history, we've got the search number, in this case number 18. That just means that I've done 18 searches today. Don't worry about that. We've got the search that we did poverty or deprivation, so it will include any paper that fills either of those criteria, and it has found 125,955 items. If we clicked on that, it would actually show us those items. We're not going to want to look at that number of papers, so there's no point in doing that at this point. Now we might look at that and we say, look, that might not be all the papers that are relevant to this particular conceptual bucket. We think
Please stop.
Yeah, yes, sir, the video stopped.
Okay, now I think we can give this to all students, they can go through on their own if required.
You'll notice that I've said all fields here.
It's going on.
Searching
Let
by
it go
author,
on. I'll
by
ask
title.
when it is to be stopped.
See search number 19. It is still this conceptual bucket that we're trying to build up, and it's identified 512,000 papers. And we would continue doing this. We would continue adding search terms and ideas, separating them by an or until we believe that we've identified within that bucket all the papers that might be relevant. For the sake of this example, I'm just going to stop there. Now we move on to our next conceptual bucket, HIV. We want to identify all the papers in PubMed that may have anything to do with HIV, and we include other search terms that are important. For example, we would continue adding terms and keywords. We might include human immunodeficiency virus, etc., etc. In this case, we'll just stop with two for the sake of simplicity. Remember to rate them by all. In this case, we're going to use all fields to be inclusive, and we hit add to history, and search number 20 on HIV identified 400,000 papers. And then of course we would do the exact same thing for treatment outcomes. We would develop a search term that identified all the papers that we thought were relevant to treatment outcomes. For the sake of simplicity, I'm not going to do that now, but you understand exactly what I'm getting at. So we've identified papers that have got something to do with poverty, and we've identified papers that have got something to do with HIV. How do we identify the papers that exist in both of these searches? And the way we click on add, and add, you'll see these searches pop up in here. In this case, we do want them separated by and, because we want to find papers that fulfill this search query and fulfill this search query. Hit add to history, and and that has found 18,121 papers. All of these papers will be found in the results of both of these search queries. Now, if we click on this 18,000 papers, it does the search, it pulls out the actual papers from Pubmed, and we can see here. Pubmed gives the option of filtering this. We could review papers. You can filter by whether or not the full text of the paper is free and available. And now, of course, you can click on any one of these papers and have a look at it. Now let's talk about mesh terms. Before we carry on, I just wanted to say a big thank you to Biomed Central, or BMC, for sponsoring this video. Biomed Central is a publishing company that publishes open access journals. And that means that the full text of any paper that they publish is available for free to anybody in the world. I have really been extremely impressed with Biomed Central as a company. They have integrity and they are truly making the world a better place. So check them out at biomedcentral.com. I'll put a link in the description below.
You can ask Ronald to stop
Let's talk about mesh terms. Mesh terms are fantastic. And if you do a search engine like.
Well, I hope everybody has seen this. Essentially, you can independently go through this YouTube and you can get the details of it. The main component that is to be seen here, that if you go for PubMed search, you require the keywords, and some of the keywords you can give input in the advanced search, where independently you can write, then you see so many papers are coming, and when you put them as and instead of one or the other, you add 1 and 2 and 3, then slowly the number of papers are going to be filtered, and thereby the number of literature available on your theme area ultimately is going to be reduced. And once that are less number, then you can see the entire list, and on the left side you will see many of them which are available in the form of free text, some are available only in the form of abstract, and then based on those you can go into the details, and then that becomes your collection of literature prior to your working on them, reading and taking notes. Then use that matrix, summary matrix that we showed, and then document all those, and eventually after having understood the entire arena of literature, then you think independently and see how you should organize your body of discussion in the literature review. Now with this, I think I would stop here, and then we will discuss many questions that may be in the minds of the students. And if you also require any further clarifications on any of the points that are discussed, we are going to take it up. Okay, Satish?
Dr. Satish, please unmute.
Unmute, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for an elaborate and insightful presentation. It was really nice. Thank you so much. So, sir, with your permission, I'll begin the question and answer session. And we don't have many questions, but one of the questions, I think most of the questions you have answered it in your presentation. Still, some students want to know, what is a database? Like, if you can elaborate on that, which is a good database, all those kind of things. If you can elaborate once again for some of the students who have not been able to understand the concept of database.
Yeah, actually, databases are the storage of data. All what has been published by accepted journals by the database companies, they pull out all the information and they store in the form of a resource material information. And therefore, those databases contain articles published all over the world on specific areas. Now, many databases I shared with you, which are particularly for life science, and that includes medical science. So like PubMed is one of the major ones. So you can select to begin with which databases are important for your topic to find articles from in consultation with your teacher or the group instructor who is trying to do that to you. And these databases are based on the keywords that are given in the journal, and these database trace those based on the keywords and include them in the database for a particular kind of activity or topic that are categorized accordingly. So there are standard databases like the Scopus, then you have Pubmed, then you have the Science Direct, which is now Web of Science, and so on. These are the standard databases. Any specific database that you might like to look at depending on the topic is going to be indicated by your instructor. Am I clear?
Yes, sir. I think you were clear. Anybody from the panelists who want to add to Professor Pala said,
Yeah.
Professor Navani or Dr. Gupta, Professor Nish? Professor Navani or Professor Gupta, Dr. Gupta, if you want to add something to that, what Sarah
I think
said.
sir has covered almost, the answer has been given already. I would repeat the same what sir said.
Okay. Okay. So, so there is another question from one student who wants to say, who want to know how to keep a track of searches. How do we keep a track? Of course, you have explained it through the help of an Excel sheet, but
Yeah.
the student wants to know a little bit more on how to keep a track of searches you make on the different databases or search engines.
Yeah, actually, when you are using the search engines, you can keep record in your computer itself or laptop, that you can have the memory of those databases that you are going through without eliminating them, so that you can go back to that database when you type, or list out the databases in your computer, all that you are searching, you know, in your OneNote or whatever, those places you can keep the sites of search and copy paste, so that you know a whole lot of sites that you have searched for your particular topic. And once you have a entire array of databases that you have searched in your record, you can go back anytime to that particular site and you can search for things which probably you have overlooked in the first time search. And the second is you make a Excel sheet, you know, for each time you write a paper, for the details of the paper, read the paper, then you can make notes of different kinds, which are, I showed you already, and these are going to be shared with you, you know. So therefore, these are the two ways. One is keep track of the sites that you are visiting in your OneNote area, and the other is details of the paper. You make a Excel sheet documenting details as you are reading, and then go through it again and again and find out how you can relate different papers with each other or differences and so on. And make special remark at the last column where you make your own note. This I should revisit for which purpose? This particular point is not clear from this paper, but I would like to see some others like that. So these are the ways you have to organize yourself. I'm in a meeting, I'll call you back, okay? So these are the ways and means by which you can organize yourself so that you don't miss out on either databases that you have visited or the details of the reading that you have made, and without forgetting them if you have documented them, right?
Okay, sir. So another question from a student who wants to know that most of the people who write reviews are scientists who have a lot of knowledge in the field, and at least they can contribute, they can make some personal contributions. But how can a student make contribution to writing reviews, especially when there is a tendency for students to plagiarize?
So that is why this training session is given to you. Now, plagiarism is an issue which you are hearing from your seniors perhaps, that even for their dissertation we cannot accept if there are copying more than 10% as per rules by the UGC. So you always have to work hard on thinking, how do I write things on my own words based on what I have understood. So it is an exercise which normally would come after a training and effort for many times. It doesn't come on your own. That is why you have the teacher guides who are going to help you in doing that. When you write something about a paper, you send that paper to teacher and say, I am getting the extracts like this. Am I in the right track? So you continuously be in touch with your supervisor who is going to help you overcome this. And we don't expect that you are going to be a perfect review writer like the review that I showed you to begin with. However, this is a training stage where if you get the minimum concept on how to write, and eventually with 3, 4, or 5, 6 people coming together along with a teacher guide, if it comes up to the stage of publication, that is what is desirable. But if you try, nothing is impossible, right? You should know what you are doing, why are you doing, how are you going to do it. And if you know all those, then it is possible to make anything happen as one would expect it to happen at the end. It does not happen overnight. Students who write reviews with us, our PhD students, their writing has to be checked at least 15 to 20 times, but each time indicating improvement. And that is the job of the supervisor or the group leader who is doing that. Without firing or shouting at you, coolly they should indicate, this is not the way, this point you have missed, it's an important point. So this is what is the purpose of this particular exercise. We are there with you, we are going to help you. And at least if it doesn't come, every write-up may not come up to the stage of publication, but the art of it you have acquired. And that is what is going to be the benefit of this training for a longer period of time in the years to come when you gradually mature into a good scientist. So we don't expect anything that would happen overnight. It's going to take a time. But your effort after this period of summer internship of 2 months, if you shelve it and say forget about it, जो किया है और देखना नहीं चाहिए उसमें, then you will not make any progress. You keep doing that even after completion of this period. Keep that in your mind. I have to keep working on it and become a good writer, a review writer or a research paper writer, whatever. So this is a training, and as much as you can acquire during this training, it would be asset for you on a longer terms. That is what you should be keeping in mind. Okay.
Dr. Satish, I would like to add something over here for both the questions. I think the second question on how to sort out your own papers and how to keep a track. So there is one software which is called Mendeley. Okay, that's a free software. As far as I know, it's free. I don't know if they have revised the rates and all, but you can always have your own database on your local computer. So when you download papers and this Mendeley is used to actually search, it becomes your personal database. So you can open Mendeley and you can type in your keywords, and whatever papers are available on your computer relevant to those keywords, it's going to show you those papers. And you can actually even download citations in different formats. So this is a very user-friendly software. So that is something which students can try out. Okay, and then I can see Dr. Nilima is also writing that Zotero also can be used. So these are few softwares which the students can opt for. And regarding the latest question, when you have to, regarding how plagiarism and all this can be taken care of, whenever I teach the PhD students, I give one example to them. What if you are getting a question, okay, like you have written essays in your school. So if you get a question, write an essay on your mother. And another question which you get is write an essay on gram staining, which is going to be easier. Definitely, writing an essay on your mother is going to be much easier because you know your mother so well. And for writing an essay on gram staining, you have to first know who is Gram, what did he do, and what is the procedure, and so on and so forth. So to gain a mastery and to write something in your own words, you have to read a lot of papers. You have to become very rich in that subject area. And then you don't have to read anything. You actually, the thoughts would originally pour out. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Professor Neelu. So, sir, there's another question. Like this is quite obvious that they want to know what is the format to write a research paper. In other words, they want to know whether the difference in research paper or research article versus review article. Are there any word limits? All those kind of questions have come in.
Yeah, if you compare one research article and a review article side by side from standard journals, you can make out, right? The main difference between a review article, you are reviewing the research of many people versus a research article, which is your own research, right? So that naturally the formats are going to be different from each other. In the review article, you won't have results section, right? On the other hand, you are going to review different aspects of a particular broad area under subheadings after the introduction. You introduce the concept of your review and you eventually write some of the critical points that are going to be part of the review, some which are very well established, some which are not known. Therefore, in this review, you are going to review the known things, compare, and then come out with certain gaps and your proposition or future prospect. So therefore, you have introduction in a review, followed by subheading wise, more emphasis on literature on each of these subheadings. And eventually you sum up, summarize, it's called sum up or summary. And then in that you will have some discussion as well as your conclusion. In the sum up itself, you don't have to make separate one in some journal. Some journal you might make separate discussion and conclusion. Some journal would like to have future prospect or what is your recommendation, which can be in the sum up for some journal, or you can have a separate heading like future prospect. And then followed by the bibliography or the references that you have cited, all the literature that you have cited against any particular statement or either made by them or made by you or the comparison you have to cite. And those all have to be put at the end. Prior to that, before the bibliography, you can give acknowledgement if somebody has helped. Some people have shared their expertise or guidance. And sometimes they also ask the review, the publishers, the funding agencies, if your writing has been funded through some research grant or otherwise. So sometimes they also ask conflict of interest, that you, like the companies, if you have a company and then you are writing this review, keeping in mind of that, so there's a conflict of interest, you are in business, so you are going to be biased. So these kind of things are all part of the review writing. For a research article, you might have seen some research article that also goes through abstract title, abstract, keywords, highlights of the research, and then the introduction, materials and methods, which is a very specific component of a research paper, followed by results. The results can also be through subheading. Each point, each result of one particular question, you can describe in the form of subheadings. And once you describe, it has to be supported by the results that you have got in the form of photographs or graphs or tables or whatever that is, you have to cite in the text. And then next would be discussion. Some papers, if the short communications, results and discussion can be combined. If there are long papers, ideally results should be separate from the discussion. At the end of discussion, you can write the conclusion and future prospect, or you can make a separate section of conclusion depending on the journal. And then again, acknowledgement, the funding, conflict of interest, and then bibliography, and so on. And in paper also, there are many short paper journals like Nature Science, they do not want to include all your results or the data in terms of figure and publication. Then they would give you another option of supplementary figures, supplementary data, which would be uploaded, but it would not appear in the printed form of the paper. The Nature and Science, the abstract papers and journals in particular. So supplementary data, those who are interested in going through more details, they can get. Those who are not, they may not require to go through. They only see the printed data, which are more important data. So major difference between a paper and a review is that paper is your own research activity that you are reporting. Review, you are reporting the activity of many and your own thoughts and highlighting which are essential areas which are going to be explored in terms of research, right?
Okay, sir. So there's one more question. Since all the data from the particular paper cannot be cited in a review, how do you think a particular data should be included and the other can be excluded or skipped?
It depends on what is your question that you are discussing. For that question or discussion, the most relevant papers, most important papers can be screened towards inclusion, and those which are not so important, by reading them only you can make out, and they can be excluded, because you also don't have too many references. In a review, roughly around, depending on the journal, you can have 30 references to 110, 150, depending on that. So there you have to screen those which are more important papers, path-breaking ones, definitely in that particular topic of discussion, and those which are not so important, you can ignore, or those which are mostly old data, may not have much relevance at that time in the context of the present discussion, they can be eliminated. So therefore, I told in the beginning, how many years down the lane the data that you are reviewing. If you have 5 years data, any publication beyond 5 years before, you can automatically eliminate, right? So there are many ways by which you have to decide which ones to include, which ones not to include. Now, the way you write and in the context of the writing, the most relevant references are going to be important. So citation is a very important area. Your justification to cite some papers and not others is also important. And that expertise comes through practice and through repeated writing of the reviews or research articles. It doesn't come all on a sudden. You have to learn that. Okay.
So can I put this question to the other panelists?
And also I would like to add, when you are citing, the importance of the paper is also reflected in the citations of that paper. You can, in your search, you can find the citation of each of the papers. So most highly cited papers are relevant. If relevant, they should be cited on priority. And those which are less cited and not so important can be eliminated. Yeah.
So with your kind permission, to put into the other panelists.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. Professor Neelu, somebody wishes to know, while writing a review, are there particular grammatical rules like active or passive voice?
Yes, certainly. Most of the papers from India are rejected because we use passive voice. So the answer is, of course, you have to try to frame your sentences in active voice.
Okay.
So English framing, and also what happens is when you write and if you are not clear in your English, even your supervisor would first pay attention to your formatting, your English, and then starts, going ahead with the scientific part, because that is but obvious. If something doesn't look good, you don't develop interest. Okay, so the first thing is when you send across any write-up to your guide, you make sure that it's in a good format, it has been framed well. The sentences should be simple. Very long sentences, very complicated sentences will not be useful. So try to keep it in your own words, simple sentences. And then, of course, if you want to add some flavor and some good language to it, you want to articulate some good sentences, with the help of your guide and with the help of a lot of thesaurus which is available, you can definitely use some good synonyms and use some good strong words to make your sentences better. Okay.
I would like to add to it that tense also is very important. See, the papers that you are reviewing, their work you can indicate in past tense because they are already done. But the statement that you make or analysis that you make, this should be in the present tense, right? Like so on and so forth reported that this particular protein is involved in this kind of activity. However, there are others who also reported that it may not be primarily involved, but maybe secondary. So you say reported. But now you say, based on all the observations, I think that this point needs to be worked on further in order to get actual mechanism that is involved with reference to this protein. So past tense for those which already have done, and present tense, so like the passive voice and active voice, tense also is important. So there are some things which you will learn by reading. You have to read and read and read and consciously read. Like if you want to know about the tense, you read 3-4 reviews and see the tense usage, past versus present. Similarly, voice. So like that, good papers, good journals are more important in the beginning to find out the accepted style, the more standard style of writing, right? So choose papers which are of high impact factor, in terms of their citations.
Thank you, sir. Professor Navani, one more question. I think you'll be in a position to answer that. Could you please elaborate on terms like impact factor and citations?
Okay. So see, we are working in an environment which is, peer review. Science is always peer review. So what is peer review? So other people who are working in similar fields are going to assess how is your work. Okay, and generally there is a hierarchy. So as you become senior, obviously because of the experience, there are some papers which are very advanced, which generally go to editors who have been in the field from long time. Okay, so by their experience, they would just read the paper and they would understand whether there is anything substantial in this paper or not. So when your paper is having something substantial, in the first place, it automatically will be accepted by a journal which has been in the field from a long time. Okay, if the journal has been in the scientific field from a long time, it has a long-standing existence, that itself means that it is publishing worthwhile good papers and good science. Okay, but sometimes there are problems with such papers also, like Nature sometimes publishes some papers which are very controversial. Okay, so one should not only go by impact factor and by high citation. You must sometimes, very low citation papers become useful for students just because they don't have very heavy research in them. They have very basic research to portray. So if you are looking as a student perspective, you have to pick up papers which give you the concept, which make you understand what problem you're going to focus on. Okay, like if somebody is working on respiratory or this COVID infection, for example, if they don't know what is a virus, how are they going to even understand COVID research? So for understanding what is a virus, the books are the best. Okay, so you have to go to the books. And research papers, we refer to them when we are interested in knowing what is the latest going on in this field. Okay, like if you want to know what is diagnosis, what is happening to COVID diagnosis, obviously you have to go to research paper. You don't get that information in the books. Okay, so impact factor would be, in a way, your research has created impact in the scientific community. How many people are referring it? Okay, and the number of the number of citations which your paper gets automatically is the one which gives you an idea of the impact. So a good impact factor journal would have papers which are cited more number of times, which means they have had a good impact on the audience. Okay.
You can mention the I-10 and index,
Yes.
the H index.
Yes. So I-10 would be if an author is publishing some articles and if at least 10 papers have been cited 10 times, so that is I-10. Okay. And H index would be multiple. Like if H index of an author is 12, for example, then it means that that author has published 12 papers having 12 citations. And if it's 13, means 13 papers have 13 citations, like that.
13 or more. 13 or
Yeah, more, of course. Yeah, and Dr. Sharma wants to say something.
Yeah, sure.
He's an expert. You should have asked him this question. NAC data. You have to unmute, Dr.
Unmute.
Sharma.
Professor
Unmute.
Sharma, you have to unmute.
Yes, Professor Pal and Professor Navani Madam already have elaborated in various details of review literature. One aspect I would like to share with the student, and maybe they will be motivated. So whenever we go for writing others' work, in a part of comprehending in our own language, language can be very sophisticated. It can be simple, whatever way. So here's the point. So all the students, they are aspiring for GRE and TOEFL. So for all the universities across the globe, and specifically for the GRE, comprehension part is very, very critical. So what is the point here? Once we'll participate for these review activities, it is a golden platform where you will start writing a certain content, certain research topic, or the interest in your own words. That is going to be irrespective of the review paper you are going to get, or some document are going to be prepared, some credits are going to be offered to you, like 2 credit, 4 credit. Other than this is very good opportunity to all of you from first year to the 4th year. If you will start participating in a team with your teacher and some member, you will learn, and you will have good command on preparation for even GRE and TOEFL examination, where the first requirement is how you are going to understand any research topic, because all the UG, PG students, they will opt for postgraduate program or PhD, whatever in future. So that is golden opportunity. So invest your time for multiple objectives, not only as a part of 2 credit, 4 credit you will get. Also you opt for various other academic prospect you have in the form of various examination. And that is why write in your own language, write whatever it is, poor or excellent or bad, it does not matter. Once you will write poor, tomorrow it will be good. Then after 1 year it will be better, and then it will go to the next. So that is my suggestion to all the students. Thank you very much.
Professor Sharma. I hope you'll be able to answer one more question. Some student wants to know how to choose appropriate database out of the many options that are available. How to choose the appropriate database?
My suggestion to the student is, and I think next week we will have detailed practical based with various database. I will try my best. I think after 1 week we have one more webinar to let the student to have a little bit more detail. I will explain, but the point is, first step is to search for the database, to know about the database. Once you will go for practical use of the database, then it becomes very easier. Like suppose if I will type the Pubmed in my mobile or laptop or any other whatever gadgets we have, once we type and once we start exploring, then we come to know. Like if you are sitting on the desk and we are making no attempt, no efforts, where is the Pubmed, where is Scopus, where is EBSCO, and there are many databases. So what is my request to all the students? Ignite your steps and mind, type one database and look at, type some keyword what you have in your mind or imagination, and look at how the searches are coming up, and then you will explore. At the same time, for the life sciences, as Professor Pal sir has suggested, Pubmed is the highly acceptable database. For the beginner, any of you, and this database is very easy to handle. All the steps are very clear. So I suggest all the students for biotechnology, those are participating for these activities, go for first target, that is Pubmed. Include some keywords what you have in your imagination as per your choice, no problem. And then you look at how the searches are coming up, and then that will be the first step. So I suggest from today till the 1 week, once we will go for another webinar, at least go for the Pubmed. Search the database, look at all the options, and that is going to be helpful. Thank you.
This question is for Dr. Gupta. Can we write a review on already reviewed topics but containing new information? Can we write a review on a topic that has already been reviewed but with new information? Were you able to hear my question? Dr. Gupta, were you able to hear my question?
Yeah, you have to unmute Dr. Gupta.
Dr. Gupta, you have to unmute.
Now I can hear you. So
Yeah.
if a review has already been published in the area, which is actually covered by so many scientists of repute, basically reputed scientists, still you can write that review on that area, but you have to be like, what is your opinion in that? That is going to be must. Even if I say that if you design a review, if you draft a review of that particular on that particular area, some of the things will be similar and you have to add little bit more information that has came. And one thing that you can add is what is your future aspects you want, a future perspective part. And if that future perspective part is strong, and if you are giving your opinion in form of some table, in form of some pictorial presentations, so then it could be actually, it can be a best to actually introduce in such a competitive area. And if your views are acceptable by some peers in that field, it is definitely that would be actually going to be more cited also. So that is possible. And as sir also suggested that you should avoid if some actually some topics are reviewed or some topics are actually so many reviews are there. So normally it should be avoided because it is already competitive. But if you can provide some good points in that particular review with something, then it can also be right in that. Is my opinion basically.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gupta. Any other members of the panelists would like to add on what he has said? Professor Pal or Professor Sharma or Professor Navani? Anyone who would like to add on what Dr. Gupta said?
Oh, I think it's fine.
Okay. Professor Navani, I think we have time for 2 more questions. This question is for you, Professor Navani. At this stage, how does a review have to be? Has it to be treated as a learning activity or a full-fledged review encompassing everything a systematic review would have?
Okay. So I think it's a learning activity, of course, for all the students. And if it culminates into a good article, it's appreciated. I think that should be the goal. And what my suggestion would be, my personal opinion is that, you start with a mini review. You don't have to write a full-fledged review, because with a mini review, you get the experience also, you know what is to be written. And many times people say, oh, I don't have so much experience to write a review. Okay, fine. We understand that one has to be an expert in an area to write a review. But sometimes there are reviews which actually compile or gather information from different research papers and then give their critical analysis. I think for the students, those kind of reviews would be easy to handle.
Thank you, Professor Navani. Sir, I think you'll be the right person to answer this question. Can we write a review in easier words for newbies, as it may be difficult for younger students to understand research articles on particular topics? Were you able to hear my question?
No, say it again. What?
Okay, can we write a review in easier words for newbies, as it may be difficult for younger students to understand research articles on particular topics?
Dr. Navani, why don't you answer this?
That's a very good question, actually. You can start simple and then make it your guide will anyways make it complicated.
Okay. Does anyone want to add on that? Professor Sharma or Dr. Gupta?
Yeah, I would like to. Yes, sir, please.
No, Dr. Sharma, please.
So, sir, I would like to add here, the students should be very aware that the review writing is not just a review paper. We should be very clear. review writing activities, the name review is there. So the review writing activities can have the different categories of document. It can be in the form of also some of the journal they host some of the educational document, like suppose if a student has prepared very good informative educational material on GPCR, G protein coupled receptors. So if it is very pictorial, very well diagrammatic in nature, so and that can be understood by the student, learners. So that type of the document is also hosted and published by some of the good journals. So we should not be in a view here that review writing means review paper. If any student are writing in a very simple word for undergraduate student, it is well accepted. So those documents can be edited, can be formatted into a particular style of that particular category of document and can be published. So starting from the large systematic review, various mini review as Professor Navani Madam has suggested, and also hypothesis and very small paper can be drafted, no problem. So the students should be very free here. If they have the capability or invest time up to for only 5 pages of the document, and that document is appreciated by others, including scientists or student or newbies, that is fine. So no need to get, like burdened. Oh yes, I have to write 20 page, 50 page of review paper because this is the review paper writing activities. No, that is not true. So what I feel students should be free. They can write in a different style, different languages, different, not language means English language, that is the scientific language. Languages means the style of presenting the document. It can be simpler, it can be scientific, it can be complicated as we know. So that is what my opinion. So they should be free in their mind.
Dr. Satish, there's just one point which I want to add. Mind mapping is a very good tool which the students can note. Okay, mind mapping is something where when you read a paper, you actually convert it into a graphical form. Pal sir has already shown you how a graphical abstract looks like, and that is something which is very useful. There are a lot of atlas of immunology. Okay, if you refer to that, you actually don't have to read the textbook. It's a graphical form, so it's much easier to understand. So if you read a paper and if you start making your own diagrams, which represent the whole paper, your information becomes very small and it's very easy to understand the information, and therefore extracting information becomes much easier. So people can even try. There are a lot of online material available on mind mapping. Yeah, thank you.
This question is really good because what I also suggest some of the students, because I was reading a paper from that was written by Dr. Robert Bob Sim from MRC Immunochemistry Unit, and that general impact factor is only 2. And of course, in that paper, there is some very good novel information, novel report. It was presented in only one picture, and all this paper was completely like a perspective and review type. But the way it was written like a story. It was in a compliment paper. It was completely story form written. I started reading first time that paper, and I stopped when it was so interesting that I continued completely reading that. So the information was in such a way that, of course, the student which actually asked this question, they can write in a very simple language, and that should be like a very complicated thing in a very simple manner, and they can present like a storyline, one thing. And there are some journals also available. Those actually takes students' opinion, students' writing. Like there are some journals are there. Student section is also mentioned there. So if they want, if they have performed the experiment, like I have seen some, they actually some instructor has assigned, okay, you have to purify 5 lectins and whatever simple method you have presented this. Of course, it is not possible in the review this time, but they can also write in a very in their own language and checked by their supervisor, and then they can also go for that student section of that. And there is one journal possibly is there also that takes specifically educational things that can also go to student. They can write in simple manner like a story manner, and that can be also published. What is my opinion, basically.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. I think we have taken almost all the questions from students, and we can close the question answer session. It was really a very informative session that we had so far. So I take this opportunity to thank Professor Pal for coming in and delivering his views and the ideas about review writing. It was, once again, I have to repeat it, it was very insightful. Thank you so much, sir, once again. I thank the panelists, Professor Neelu Navani. I thank Professor Sharma. I thank Dr. Gupta for their expert comments. I also thank Kunal and IPSA for their help. I also thank Shishti and Rituja for being there. So thank you all. Thank you for attending. Thank you to all the participants for attending, and stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Dr. Satish.
Yes.
Madam, please.
Yeah, I just want to make one small word of thanks for, especially for Professor Pal. We just told him 2 days back that your talk is scheduled, and we always want him to be the opening batsman. That's because it motivates us all. And he was so kind to accept and prepare the presentation in just 2 days' time. So, Pal sir, thank you so much for always guiding us and always saying yes to everything, all the initiatives. And I also want to thank especially Dr. Satish, because he's taking a lot of efforts and coordinating everything, and all the student coordinators as well. And also again, thank to the IT section and to the panelists. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
I also have to thank Professor Navani and Satish to take the lead in this particular exercise, and all other teachers who participated. And I think we have many things to give to the students. In a small way, I think many of them are going to be motivated and would eventually flourish in the years to come. And therefore, this thought of summer internship actually is a very ideal thought that we have decided. And let us give our best to the students to motivate them for these different activities that we have undertaken. And thank you again. Thank you all and the students for participating. And hopefully they will get going and keep at it. And there are nothing that prevents anybody from learning if one wants to learn. And learning, I'm learning now also, okay, at this age. And there is no end to learning. And it gives so much of pleasure when you really hit upon something which you never thought earlier or which you never did before. So this is what is very important thing to keep in mind. And I convey my best wishes to my young friends who have come up to the idea of acting on these different activities that we are participating in these activities. Thank you.
And the next sessions, which are scheduled tentatively, are, I think, Dr. Nilesh Sharma is going to speak on 10th of this month. And then Dr. Rajesh Gupta will be speaking on the 17th. So these are the tentative schedules. Of course, the students will know about this.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all for being there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.